Welcome back, listeners, to Sandman Stories Presents, a folklore podcast where I read you to sleep or until the next story. I'm your host, Dustin. Today we have another story from Japan, this time from W.E. Griffis, who you might remember from my Korean folklore series. Same guy. This is a story that comes to Japan through Chinese folklore and can be found in a few different cultures. It is based on a star crossing the Milky Way in the middle of July. Why is this coming out on December 22nd? Stick around afterwards to find out. Okay, let's begin. The meeting of the star lovers. One of the greatest days in the calendar of old Japan was the 7th of July, or, as the Japanese people put it, the 7th day of the 7th month. It was a vermilion day in all the almanacs, to which every child looked forward with eyes sparkling, hands clapping, and fingers counting as each night rolled the time nearer. All manner of fruits and other edible vegetables were prepared, and cakes baked in the household. The boys plucked bamboo stalks and strung bright-colored ribbons, tinkling bells, and long streamers of paper on which poetry was written onto their branches. On this night, mothers hoped for wealth, happiness, good children, and wisdom. The girls made a wish that they might become skilled in needlework. Only one wish a year, however, could be made. So if anyone wanted several things, health, wealth, skill in needlework, wisdom, etc., they must wait many years before all the favors could be granted. Above all things, rainy weather was not to be desired. It was a good sign when a spider spun his web over a melon, or, if put in a square box, he should weave a circular web. Now the cause of all this preparation was that on the 7th of July, the herd boy star and the spinning maiden star crossed the Milky Way to meet each other. These are the stars which we call Copernicus and Alpha Lyrae. These stars that shine and glitter so far up in the zenith are a boy with an ox and a girl with a shuttle, about whom the story runs as follows. On the banks of the silver river of heaven, which we call the Milky Way, there lived a beautiful maiden who was the daughter of the sun. Her name was Shokujo. She did not care for games or play like her companions, and thinking nothing of vain display, wore only the simplest of dresses. Yet she was very diligent and made many garments for others. Indeed, she was so busy that all called her the weaving or spinning princess. The Sun King noticed the serious disposition and close habits of his daughter, and tried in various ways to get her to be more lively. At last, he thought to marry her. As marriages in the Starland are usually planned by the parents, and not by the foolish lover boys and girls, he arranged the union without consulting his daughter. The young man on whom the Sun King thus bestowed his daughter's hand was Kingin, who kept a herd of cows on the banks of the celestial stream. He had always been a good neighbor, and living on the same side of the river, the father thought he would get a nice son-in-law, and at the same time improve his daughter's habits and disposition. No sooner did the maiden become a wife than her habits and character utterly changed for the worse, and the father had a very vexatious case of tadashiku shuguru, too much of a good thing, on his hands. The wife became not only very merry and lively, but utterly gave up the loom and needle. She gave up her nights and days to play and idleness, and no silly lover could have been more foolish than she. The Sun King became very much offended at all of this, and thinking that the husband was the cause of it, he determined to separate the couple. So he ordered the husband to remove to the other side of the stars, and told him that hereafter they should only meet once a year, on the 7th night of the 7th month. To make a bridge over the flood of stars, the Sun King called a myriad of magpies, which thereupon flew together, and making a bridge, supported him on their wings and backs, as if it were a roadway of solid land. So bidding his weeping wife farewell, the lover husband sorrowfully crossed the river of heaven. No sooner had he set foot on the opposite side than the magpies flew away, filling all the heavens with their chatter. The weeping wife and lover husband stood for a long time wistfully gazing at each other from afar. Then they separated, the one to lead his ox, the other to ply her shuttle during the long hours of the day with diligent toil. Thus they filled the hours, and the Sun King again rejoiced in his daughter's industry. But when night fell and all the lamps of heaven were lighted, the lovers would come and stand by the banks of the starry river and gaze longingly at each other, waiting for the 7th night of the 7th month. At last the time drew near, and only one fear possessed the loving wife. Every time she thought of it, her heart played a pit-a-pat faster. What if it should rain? For the river of heaven is always full to the brim, and one extra drop of rain causes a flood which sweeps away even the bird bridge. But not a drop fell. The 7th night of the 7th month came, and all the heavens were clear. The magpies flew joyfully in myriads, making one way for the gliding feet of the lovesick lady. Trembling with joy, and with heart fluttering more than the bridge of wings, she crossed the river of heaven and was in the arms of her husband. This she did every year. The lover husband stayed on his side of the river, and the wife came to him on the Magpie Bridge, save on the sad occasion when it rained. So every year the people hope for clear weather, and the happy festival is celebrated alike by old and young. The end. Now, this tale is a little bit of a sad one, and I have a good reason for picking it at this time. The reason I chose it is because December 22nd will be our 10-year wedding anniversary. In a few months after that, I'll be moving to America, and I'll have a couple of months living in America and waiting for my wife to finish up everything in Korea and come move to America. It's going to be tough as heck not having her there with me. Yes, I'll be in America, but I dread the thought of having to wait until she comes over. And it might not be until July or so that she comes over, so this date is kind of a good match. I just hope that she'll be able to come to America soon after, and we won't have to wait for a bird bridge. And the podcast shout out is to Spooky Tales. Do you like spooky tales? Do you like spooky tales from Latin America? Then do I have the podcast for you. Hosts MJ and Christina bring you creepy tales from Latin America and the broader Spanish-speaking world. They cover culture from Mexico, Nahuatl stories, stories from the West Coast, and more. Always a great resource for the Latin culture. I highly recommend their show. And if you like them as much as I do, go and give them a listen, a rating, and a review. And the listener shout-out is to Reykjavik, Iceland. As I only have a handful of listens, the capital region accounts for 100% of them. A lovely bit of marketing. Iceland is green and Greenland is icy. Also, Iceland has some really cool features as a volcanic nation, and I really hope to visit the hot spring lagoon someday. And so to my listeners, or listener in the capital, I say, Takk fyrir og góða nótt. Thank you, and good night.